Supremacy were mentioned 75 times in the Washington Post and the New York Times.
But the media is different from museums.
In 2020, the words white supremacy were mentioned 700 times in the Washington Post and the New York Times, and 2004.
So now than when it was happening, bruh. On an article to argue with a conservative. But I want y'all to hear this clip and don't hear too much of me. Let's roll the clip. We'll watch it together. Roll it.
Starting around 2011, 2012, sociologists started to notice a shift in white liberal opinion polling to where white progressives became more extreme in their views on race than Black and Hispanic Americans.
I want to actually play a clip of Nick Fuentes addressing that topic of white liberal, okay? It is absolutely important that we make this point today, all right? And now, of course, we're going to drag Brandon, but it is important that we make this point. So we're going to have Brandon Tatum, of course, telling Black people to not care about anything. Wow. You know, he would be all up on Batia Ongar Sargon from CNN because she is Jewish. And so we know that Brandon, you know, he's just, I mean, look, I hate to do the dancing, you know, type of memes and stuff, and because people used to call me that. People probably still call me that. I really don't care. But, you know, if there ever was a time, I'm sorry, this guy really blasphemed Jesus. So it's like, for me, I just feel like all stops. I mean, we do pray that Brandon Tatum does see the light and come back to Christ. I genuinely, I do mean that. But until he does, we will call out his hypocrisies. And with that said, let's get right into this clip.
They called this, the sociologists called it the Great Awokening. And when they postulated, where did this come from? Why did white progressives suddenly start obsessing over race in a way that was actually far to the left of where Hispanic and Black Americans were on this issue? They found that the media had shifted radically how it talked about these issues. So, for example, in 2010,
who owns the media?
The words white supremacy were mentioned 75 times in the Washington Post and the New York Times.
But the media is different from museums.
In 2020, the words white supremacy were mentioned 700 times in the Washington Post and the New York Times, and 2,400 times in NPR. The word racism, 4,000 times in 2020. The words white and racial privilege from 2013 to 2019 grew by 1,500% in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and the word slavery itself exponentially skyrocketed as a percentage of words. I'm offering this only to suggest.
I understand. I'm just wondering what do you think is the problem with talking about slavery, white supremacy, racism, etc.?
So the point I'm trying to make here is that liberals will say, well, this is a reflection of reality, but of course it isn't. This is a reflection of a newfound obsession that was driven by the media, and that doesn't reflect either the moral evil of these things or the historical accuracy.
I do want to dive into what you mean by that, because you say that you don't think it's a reflection of reality. Based on what?
Well, slavery,
based on the idea that those things don't exist, that white supremacy doesn't exist, racism doesn't exist, that we shouldn't be talking about it anymore?
Based on the idea, obviously all these things I think are evil, but there's not more slavery now to the tune of
but I think part of the problem,
than there was
is that part of the problem is that back, you know, not that long ago in the 50s, the 60s, even beyond that, when there was actual Jim Crow happening in this country, people were actually treating Black people as second-class citizens. We weren't talking about those things at all.
But in
those words were virtually never mentioned.
I mean, you don't
so is that better? Was it better then, or was it worse?
You don't think that 2013 is the same as the 1960s,
But you're missing,
right?
respectfully, and I've had this debate many
times. Do you really think that there's as big a difference between the 90s?
I need y'all to see the dynamic. Hold on a second. This kind of took a quick little, let's just go to the side, just real quick. A lot of things are funny here. Abby Phillip basically said, hold on, Bachari. He sat back. Okay, so she took his manhood, basically. Okay, he sat back. Then now he keeps trying to step in. These two are still talking to each other, but I find it rich that a Jewish woman is going to tell Black people how to feel about their history. We are not allowed to tell them how to feel about their history. Me personally, I don't get into all of that holding on to anger and everything, but I'm not going to beat down the next Black man who does. I'm not doing it anymore. Y'all get Brandon Tatum to do it. I will say to black people, can we use that energy maybe to make yourself better? I do think we should do that. Okay? But who owns the media? Who owns who were the radicals in the 60s who infiltrated black churches by buying out preachers to go in there and tell black people that you need to be mad that you're not sitting at church with the white man on Sunday instead of paying attention to worshiping the Lord and focusing on the kingdom of righteousness, right? Who did that, right? She doesn't get the right to tell people how to feel about their... She really doesn't. If you understood the history of America, you would know she should not even be involved in the conversation, straight up and down. I did have a strong coffee, so I don't know how far this is going to go. Okay. Now, here we go.
But you're missing the point.
First of all, I want to point out that Bakari Sellers' soul has left his body when he actually heard a person telling the truth and speaking facts, because he digested because the girl ain't black. It's funny to watch these people fall apart, and when they're presented with reasonable facts. I put this on my life. If anybody that ever lived back in the 60s, back in the 40s and 50s, I felt like we have exaggerated their experiences because we weren't experiencing what they experienced. But we envision and create this facade that they had it worse than what they really did. Segregation, yeah, it wasn't fair in many cases. But segregation also offered black people to have possession of their own ownership in banks, ownership in museums. I mean, you name it, black people, schools, car services.
He's also the same one who tell you that there was no black Wall Street too, right? Like there was not like a black town that actually, was prosperous. Okay. All right. So, it's the hypocrisy again. Now, these are my thought processes that we have exaggerated the civil rights era and all of that. I mean, personally, I don't believe in it. Should have never forced that integration. And that thing has cost us so many problems. This civil rights discrimination and all of that, it is being taken advantage of today in 2025. It should have never happened. Never. That's why your government is infiltrated now. Anyway, and that's not towards black people. All right. So, with that said, but Brandon doesn't talk about, there's a lot of things that are embellished in history. See, that's why, to me, it's like you are a hypocrite, an absolute hypocrite. Because if we start talking about World War II, Brandon's going to say, you just hate the church, and that's why you want to talk about World War II. That's what he'll say.
Those Europeans that don't want to see Palestinians starve to death, Greta Thunberg, you know what they all have in common? They're all white. They're all white. Now, I don't agree with the hippies. I don't agree with Greta Thunberg, most of her politics. And most of the Europeans, they'd probably throw me in jail based on what I say. But they're white. They're one of ours. And how cucked is it that Jews will protect their liberals, their rapists, blacks will protect their murderers, their drug dealers, but whites, we won't even protect our liberals. Whites are going to attack our own kind, and worse, we're going to let Jews talk about whites like that. Stephen Miller says stupid white hippies, and white people say, ha, good one, dude, good one. If identity politics is good enough for them, it's good enough for us. Either everybody is going to arm up and get together under identity politics, or nobody can.
Now, me personally, I'm not into identity politics. I'm just simply not. Though I understand a recorrection, I do understand a recorrection. I understand exactly where white people are coming from. When they hear a president say, like a Joe Biden say, because there's certain words I can't use, that, in a few years, this country will be minority white and it will be a good, and that'll be good, right? We know black people, if we heard that, everybody would be up in arms, okay? So, I mean, does it get more straightforward than that? So I definitely understand that point. I do believe in helping your community. If you feel like you're in a community or whatever, I don't have those feelings. I have not had those feelings. That I guess I just don't. I just follow Christ. I'm not righteous or better than anybody or whatever, but I completely am empathetic to it. However, but that not being the full point. The point is, he's right. These people who are cosplaying, they get to sit here and say, white liberal this and white liberal that. They hate white people. And I'm not talking about the black people.